The cruel Zarkans had a young human girl strapped to a table, subjecting her to unimaginable torture until her fragile body finally gave out, slipping into unconsciousness. The Zarkans thought they could test human limits and break the spirit of Earth's youngest and most innocent on a remote, defenseless colony. They were wrong, dead wrong. Earth's dormant monsters were about to be awakened. It was the year 2257. Sirens blared as a cryogenic pod hissed open. Alex Drake, Earth's most lethal super soldier, rose from his frozen slumber. He blinked with his augmented eyes, taking in the sterile cryochamber, feeling the chill of stasis still clinging to his muscular frame. Moments later, a voice came over the intercom. "Soldier Drake, report for emergency briefing immediately." Alex moved with a sense of urgency, his genetically engineered body already alert and primed for action. He had no idea how long he'd been asleep or why he had been awakened, but the sharp edge of danger, that instinctive pull toward a threat, was unmistakable. He strode into the briefing room, where grim-faced officers awaited him. Their tense postures and hard eyes told him this was no drill. Commander Rourke, his weathered face lined with anger, spoke first. "Drake, we have a situation. The Zarkans attacked Haven Colony, slaughtered the adults, and took a captive." Rourke gritted his teeth. "A little girl, Emma Cooper, 8 years old. They tortured her, pushed her until her body collapsed, and broadcast the whole damn thing." White-hot rage ignited in Alex's chest as brutal images flashed on the screen. A child's bruised and bloodied face, alien claws tearing into soft flesh, Emma's desperate screams as she begged them to stop. "Why?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "They wanted to see the limits of human endurance, the boundaries of our biology and psyche," Rourke explained, his eyes hard as flint. "It's a message, Drake. They're toying with us, testing our resolve." Earth had maintained a tentative peace with the Zarkans, a careful dance of diplomacy and veiled threats. The technologically advanced aliens could easily overpower humanity's defenses if they chose. But this was a line crossed, a gauntlet thrown down. Emma had managed to send a distress signal, Rourke continued, buying them a chance to get her back. "That's where you come in." Alex stood straighter, his body practically vibrating with a need for violence. "What are my orders, sir?" "You're to infiltrate Zarkan space, rescue the girl, and send a very pointed message. Our children are sacred, and we will rain hell on anyone who forgets that." Commander Rourke paused, his gaze boring into Alex. "You're our best, most ruthless asset. They wanted to see the unleashed potential of humanity. Let's give them a front-row seat." The aliens had made a fatal error. They thought they knew human weaknesses, thought they could exploit human limits. But they had never faced anything like him. Alex suited up in cutting-edge armor, a sleek black shell that felt like a second skin. He armed himself with an arsenal of devastating weapons: plasma rifles, neurotoxin grenades, retractable blades sharp enough to slice through bone. As he boarded the stealth ship destined for Zarkan territory, Alex felt no fear, no hesitation. He was forged for this, honed into a living weapon. He would carve a path of destruction through the alien forces, paint their ships red with their own blood. Failure was not an option. Emma was counting on him. Every human was counting on him. The Zarkans would learn the depths of human wrath, the price of waking the monsters they thought they could control. Earth's most lethal defender was awake, and God help the aliens who stood in his way. Alex's stealth ship, the Spectre, cut through the void of space like a knife, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to Zarkan sensors. The massive alien dreadnought loomed ahead, a behemoth of metal and malice. Alex studied the intel on his display, his eyes narrowing at the sight of the formidable vessel. It was heavily shielded, overflowing with weapons, and crawling with elite Zarkan guards. Getting in wouldn't be easy, but for Emma, he'd find a way. As the Spectre drew closer, a flashing alert caught Alex's attention. Unusual energy readings emanating from the dreadnought's lower decks. He ran a scan, and the results confirmed his suspicions: a hidden research lab, likely the very place where the Zarkans subjected Emma to their brutal experiments. White-hot fury surged through his veins at the thought of what they'd put her through. Alex guided the Spectre to a blind spot along the dreadnought's hull and docked with a barely audible clank. He checked his weapons one last time, ensuring his plasma rifle was fully charged and his neurotoxin grenades were primed. With a deep breath, he cycled the airlock and stepped into the belly of the beast. The corridor was dimly lit, the air thick with the acrid stench of Zarkan technology. Alex's augmented senses were on high alert, his genetically enhanced muscles coiled and ready for action. He moved with the lethal grace of a predator, his footsteps nearly silent on the metal grating. A patrol of Zarkan guards rounded the corner, their reptilian eyes widening in surprise at the sight of the intruder. They reached for their weapons, but Alex was faster. He blurred into motion, his speed and reflexes far beyond anything the aliens had encountered. In a flurry of brutal strikes, he dispatched the guards, their bodies crumpling to the floor. Alex quickly stripped one of the fallen Zarkans and donned their armor, hoping the disguise would buy him some time. He dragged the bodies out of sight and pressed on, his mind racing as he navigated the labyrinthine ship. Hacking into a control panel, Alex accessed a map of the dreadnought. The lab was deep within the vessel, but he also noticed a cell block nearby. His heart pounded as he realized that must be where they were keeping Emma. Every fiber of his being screamed to go to her immediately, but he knew he needed to be smart. He had to find out what the Zarkans did to her and why. Just as Alex finalized his approach, alarms blared throughout the ship. A cold dread settled in his gut. They discovered his breached airlock. Red lights flashed, and klaxons wailed as a detachment of Zarkan hunter-killers, their deadliest warriors, was dispatched to his position. Stealth was no longer an option. Now it was kill or be killed. Alex armed his most devastating weapons, knowing he'd need every advantage to fight his way through the ship. As he battled deeper into the dreadnought, he planted explosive charges at key structural points, a failsafe in case things went wrong. He'd blow this entire vessel to hell before he let the Zarkans stop him. Smoke filled the corridors as Alex carved a path of destruction, his plasma rifle searing through Zarkan flesh and armor alike. Their agonized screams echoed off the walls, but he tuned them out, his focus absolute. He had to get to Emma. Finally, he burst into the cell block, his eyes frantically scanning the rows of dimly lit cages. There, in the far corner, a small human figure lay curled on the floor. Alex's heart clenched as he raced to her cell, ripping the door open with a screech of metal. Emma looked so fragile, her tiny form battered and bruised, but she was alive. Unconscious, but alive. Alex reached for her, but a menacing voice crackled over the ship's comms. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." It was KRYX, the ruthless Zarkan commander. "Surrender now, or watch the girl die as I flood her cell with lethal gas." A growl built in Alex's throat. He knew it was a bluff. KRYX would never harm his precious test subject. Without responding, Alex gathered Emma in his arms, cradling her close as he sprinted for the lab. He had to find out the truth of what they did to her before the whole ship came down on their heads. Barricading the lab door behind him, Alex laid Emma gently on a table and turned to the alien computers. His fingers flew over the keys as he hacked into the mainframe, his eyes widening in horror at what he found. The Zarkans weren't just torturing Emma for the sake of cruelty. They were mapping her brain, trying to isolate the genes that give humans their psionic potential. A cold realization washed over Alex. If the Zarkans succeeded in unlocking humanity's latent abilities for themselves, they'd become an unstoppable force. This mission was no longer just about saving one little girl. It was about preventing an existential threat to his entire species. Alex's mind raced as he absorbed the implications of the data before him. The Zarkans' experiments on Emma were part of a much larger and more sinister agenda. They were not merely torturing her. They were trying to unlock and weaponize the potential for psionic abilities that lay dormant in human DNA. If they succeeded, humanity's defenses would be obsolete, and Earth itself could be at the mercy of the Zarkans' newfound power. Desperation spurred Alex into action. He knew he had only moments before KRYX's threats became reality. He quickly set up an override on the lab systems to neutralize the gas threat, ensuring Emma's safety. As he worked, he felt a tremor run through the ship, an indication that his earlier explosive charges were primed and ready. He had a decision to make: escape with Emma and destroy the lab, or stay and attempt to sabotage the Zarkans' research directly. Think, 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 he muttered to himself, his fingers moving with precision. He set the lab's self-destruct sequence to trigger in 10 minutes. The lab would be obliterated, but Emma would be safe, and the Zarkans' research would be wiped out. He turned his attention back to Emma. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and her tiny fingers twitched occasionally. With gentle hands, he checked her vitals and prepared her for extraction. Alex had to navigate the dreadnought's corridors and reach the Spectre with her. If he failed to return to his ship before the self-destruct sequence completed, both he and Emma would be doomed. The klaxons continued to blare as Zarkan troops closed in on his position. Alex's pulse quickened. He hoisted Emma onto his shoulder and burst out of the lab, plunging back into the smoke-filled corridors. His augmented vision cut through the haze, guiding him as he fought his way toward the Spectre. The Zarkan hunter-killers were relentless. They pursued him with a fury that matched his own desperation. Alex's plasma rifle roared, its bolts of superheated energy turning enemies into molten slag. He used every ounce of his formidable skill to evade and counterattack, his movements a deadly dance of precision and force. As he neared the Spectre, a massive explosion rocked the dreadnought. Alex glanced back to see the lab engulfed in flames. The self-destruct sequence had begun. Time was running out. He ducked into a side corridor, narrowly avoiding a blast of energy that scorched the wall beside him. His heart pounded as he reached the docking bay, where the Spectre awaited him, its stealth cloak shimmering in the dim light. "Hold on, Emma," Alex whispered, adjusting her position on his shoulder. He punched in the ship's access codes, and the docking bay's door slid open with a hiss. He hurried inside, gently placing Emma in a secured seat while he prepped the ship for launch. The Zarkans had sent reinforcements, and the bay was swarming with soldiers. Alex fought with every ounce of his being, using his environment to his advantage, and finally sealed the hatch. He slid into the pilot's seat, his fingers flying over the controls. The Spectre's engines roared to life, and the ship shot out of the docking bay just as the dreadnought erupted in a series of cataclysmic explosions. The shockwave rippled through space, pushing the Spectre forward as Alex steered them into a safe distance. With a relieved exhale, Alex glanced back at Emma. She was still unconscious but safe. The destruction of the dreadnought would set back the Zarkans' plans significantly, but he knew they would regroup and retaliate. This was not the end, but rather a prelude to a much larger conflict. The journey back to Earth was tense. Alex's mind churned with thoughts of what lay ahead. The Zarkans would not take this defeat lightly, and the fight for humanity's survival was far from over. But for now, he allowed himself a moment of solace. Emma was safe, and the immediate threat had been neutralized. As the Spectre entered Earth's orbit, Alex prepared for the next phase of his mission, ensuring the planet was ready for the inevitable Zarkan retaliation. He knew that his actions had made a statement, but the real battle was just beginning. When Emma finally awoke in the safety of a medical facility, she would be surrounded by those who loved her. And Alex would continue his fight, a silent guardian against the encroaching darkness. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity would not surrender without a fight. The Spectre glided into Earth's atmosphere, its stealth systems allowing it to bypass orbital defenses and make a covert landing at a secured military facility. Alex Drake was met by a contingent of high-ranking officers and medical personnel who swiftly took over the care of Emma Cooper. He watched with a mix of relief and anxiety as the girl was carried away on a stretcher, her battered body now in capable hands. Commander Rourke, his face softened with concern and gratitude, approached Alex. "Drake, you did it. Emma's in good hands now. We've already sent her to the best medical team we have." Alex nodded curtly. "What's the status of the Zarkans? I'm guessing they're not just going to let this slide." Rourke's expression hardened again. "You're right. Our intelligence indicates that the Zarkans are already mobilizing. They're pissed and looking to retaliate. We've got reports of increased activity in their territories, shifting resources, deploying additional fleets. They'll come for us, and they'll come hard." Alex's jaw clenched. "We need to prepare. We need to be ready for whatever they throw at us." Rourke looked at him, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "You're right. And we need you, Drake. You've proven yourself invaluable. The information you retrieved from the dreadnought about their research could be the key to understanding their plans and potentially turning the tide. The weight of the situation was heavy. Alex had always been a weapon, but now he was being asked to be a leader, a strategist. It was a responsibility he had never anticipated but was willing to shoulder. "Where do we start?" he asked, determination hardening his voice. "First," Rourke said, "we need to debrief. You'll need to provide a full account of what happened on that dreadnought. We'll analyze the data you brought back, particularly about their psionic research. If we can figure out what they're planning, we can devise a counter-strategy." Alex followed Rourke to the debriefing room. The atmosphere was tense, filled with the hum of high-tech equipment and the anxious murmurs of staff. As he recounted the mission details, the room was filled with a mix of awe and apprehension. The images and data from the Zarkan dreadnought were scrutinized closely. Analysts pored over the research, trying to make sense of the psionic experiments and their potential implications. Hours later, Rourke addressed the team. "We've managed to decipher some of the data from the Zarkan lab. Their research indicates they're developing technology to artificially enhance psionic abilities, something they've never achieved before. If they succeed, they could unleash a new form of warfare against us." Alex's eyes narrowed. "We need to sabotage their efforts before they complete their research." "Agreed," Rourke said, "but we need to be cautious. The Zarkans will have reinforced their facilities. A direct assault could be catastrophic." The strategy discussions continued late into the night. Plans were laid, including a combination of intelligence gathering, covert operations, and strikes at key Zarkan facilities. Alex was given a critical role in executing these operations. He would lead a small, elite team into Zarkan territory to gather more intel and disrupt their psionic research infrastructure. As the team assembled, Alex took stock of his new allies: Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, a skilled hacker and reconnaissance expert; Sergeant David Kim, a demolition specialist with a knack for causing chaos; and Dr. Emily Grant, a psionic researcher who could provide invaluable insights into the Zarkan technology. The team was a mix of combat prowess, technical skill, and scientific knowledge, everything they needed to counter the Zarkan threat. They prepared for their mission with meticulous precision, knowing that every second counted. Their objective was clear: penetrate the heart of Zarkan research, identify the progress on psionic enhancement, and sabotage their facilities. Alex knew the stakes were high. The future of humanity hung in the balance. The Spectre was refitted for the mission, equipped with advanced stealth systems and weaponry. As it prepared for launch, Alex glanced at the team. "We're going to hit them hard and fast. We've got one shot at this. Any questions?"
Lt. Mitchell nodded.
"We're ready, Alex. Let's show the Zarkans what happens when they mess with humanity." Sergeant Kim grinned, loading a grenade launcher. "I've been waiting for this." Dr. Grant adjusted her gear, her expression serious. "I'll provide the technical support and guidance. Let's hope we can turn their own technology against them." With a final check of their equipment, the team boarded the Spectre. As the ship ascended, Alex felt a surge of adrenaline. The upcoming mission was fraught with danger, but it was a chance to strike a decisive blow against the Zarkans and protect Earth from a dire threat. The Spectre emerged from the atmosphere and set course for Zarkan space, its cloaking systems activating to make it invisible to enemy sensors. The team was silent, each lost in their thoughts as the ship approached its target. The plan was to infiltrate a heavily fortified Zarkan research facility, a place rumored to be the epicenter of their psionic enhancement program. Alex and his team would breach the outer defenses, gather critical intelligence, and destroy key components of the research. As they neared the facility, Alex's mind was focused, his senses honed. The Spectre's stealth technology kept them hidden, but they knew that once they touched down, their cover would be blown. The mission was high risk, but the stakes were even higher. The Spectre settled silently on the surface, and the team prepared for their descent into enemy territory. Alex led them through the hatch, his heart steady, his mind sharp. They were about to enter a crucible that would test their skills, resolve, and courage. As they moved through the darkened corridors of the Zarkan facility, the faint hum of alien machinery filled the air. Their path was illuminated only by the dim, flickering lights that cast eerie shadows on the walls. They had to be precise and efficient, Any mistake could mean the end of their mission and their lives. Suddenly, a series of alerts went off, and the facility was bathed in red light. The Zarkans had detected their presence. "We've been compromised," Mitchell shouted over the comms. "We need to move quickly." Alex signaled his team to split up, each member heading toward their assigned objectives. They fought through Zarkan guards, their weapons blazing as they pressed deeper into the facility. Alex and his team faced fierce resistance, but their determination and skill drove them forward. They reached the core of the research lab, where Zarkan scientists were working frantically to complete their psionic enhancement technology. Alex's team began their sabotage, planting explosives and hacking into systems to destroy critical data. Just as they were about to finish their tasks, KRYX's voice echoed through the facility's comms. "You're running out of time, humans. You've made a grave mistake." Alex's blood boiled. He knew KRYX wouldn't let them leave easily. "Get the charges set. We're getting out of here," he barked. The team worked with urgency, and as the final charges were planted, Alex led them toward their extraction point. The facility shook with the tremors of explosions, and the air was filled with the sounds of collapsing structures and panicked Zarkan voices. They fought their way back to the Spectre, their path fraught with intense combat. Each member of the team held their ground, their determination unwavering. With a final push, they boarded the Spectre and prepared for departure. As the ship ascended, the facility erupted in a massive explosion, sending a shockwave through the surrounding area. The Spectre hurtled away from the devastation, its cloaking systems reactivating to conceal their escape. Alex looked at his team, their faces smeared with sweat and grime. "We did it. We've set them back significantly." Mitchell nodded, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. "We made a difference today." Kim clapped Alex on the back. "Not bad for a day's work." Dr. Grant, her expression thoughtful, added, "We've dealt a heavy blow to their psionic research, but we need to stay vigilant. They'll regroup and retaliate." Alex's gaze hardened. "We're not done yet. We've shown them that we won't back down, that humanity is stronger than they thought. But there's still a long fight ahead." The Spectre made its way back to Earth, carrying with it the promise of continued resistance and the hope of victory. Alex and his team had proven their mettle, and as they returned, they knew that the war was far from over. But one thing was certain. They would face whatever challenges came their way with unwavering resolve and fierce determination. The Spectre cruised through the expanse of space, the hum of its engines a comforting backdrop to the tension that still hung heavy in the air. Alex Drake and his team were exhausted but resolute. The mission had been a success, but it was clear that this was only one battle in a much larger war. As Earth's defenders, they would need to be prepared for whatever came next. The return journey was quiet, each member of the team lost in their thoughts. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, normally upbeat, was deep in concentration as she reviewed the data they had recovered. Sergeant David Kim cleaned his gear with a meticulousness born of habit, his thoughts drifting to the friends and family he had left behind. Dr. Emily Grant, her face lined with fatigue, pondered the implications of their findings on the future of humanity. As they approached Earth, the Spectre's systems began to engage its re-entry protocols. Alex sat in the cockpit, his mind racing. The Zarkans were formidable, and their plans had been disrupted, but they were not defeated. Their technology and ambition had only been delayed. What new strategies would they develop? How would humanity respond to the coming storm? The Spectre touched down at the military facility, its landing gear settling on the tarmac with a soft thud. The team disembarked, greeted by the buzz of activity and the sight of medical personnel and engineers ready to assist. Emma Cooper had been stabilized and was in a secure, rehabilitative environment, receiving the care she needed. Commander Rourke met them as they exited the ship, his face showing a mixture of respect and concern. "Good to have you back, Drake. We've been analyzing the data you brought with us. It's clear that the Zarkans have escalated their efforts. We need to prepare for the possibility of an all-out war." Alex nodded, his eyes meeting Rourke's with steely resolve. "We've made a significant dent in their plans, but we can't afford to rest. We need to be proactive, gather more intelligence, and prepare for their retaliation." Rourke's expression softened slightly. "We're already mobilizing resources and building up our defenses. Your actions have given us valuable time. But this is a long fight, and it's far from over. With that, Alex and his team were debriefed and given time to rest and recuperate. The days that followed were filled with briefings, strategic meetings, and preparations for the next phase of the conflict. The Zarkans were not idle. They were regrouping, and Earth's defenders had to be ready. As Alex looked out over the sprawling military complex from his quarters, he was filled with a mix of anticipation and unease. He had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the fight was far from over. The Zarkans were relentless, and their thirst for conquest was insatiable. The team had returned to a world on the brink of a new era, a world that would need its heroes more than ever. Alex knew that the coming days would test their resolve, their ingenuity, and their spirit. But he was ready. They all were. The final scene depicted Alex standing alone on a balcony overlooking the facility, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The sky was a mix of twilight hues, a symbol of both the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The future was uncertain, the challenges ahead daunting, but there was also a glimmer of hope, a hope that humanity could rise to meet the trials ahead. The camera pulled back, showing the vast expanse of space stretching out beyond the Earth. The Zarkans were out there, and their next move was unknown. The universe was vast and full of possibilities, both perilous and promising. As the scene faded to black, the only certainty was that the fight was far from over, and the ultimate outcome remained to be seen. The future lay open, an expanse of stars and shadows waiting for the next chapter of this epic struggle.